downriver with Elam. For Elam, at first, the night began like any other. Wakefulness came in a flash. He sat upright in his straw mat, fingers clenched tight around his spear. There had been a Chue prowling through their village the last few weeks. It had already dragged away one little girl, whose head they had found stuffed up a tree 2 days after the attack. Elam had expected to hear the rallying shouts of the other men, the beast's sinister growl, or even the soft clicking of its claws over the leaf litter. Save for the crackling of the communal fire, the night was silent and peaceful. Elam rubbed the side of his head. His warrior training had pounded in him a pinpoint ability to rise from sleep at the first sign of trouble. Some intrusion had to have woken him up. He could feel it in the air, a sort of unspeakable disruption in his space. His bare toe stroked something at the foot of his mat, and he sprang to a defensive posture, his spear arm poised, ready to strike. Confusion followed, then swelling joy. At the foot of his mat was a small wooden statue, a carving of a mythical, toothy fish known to them as the Mbinga. Elam dropped his spear and snatched the carving, cradling it with reverence. Its appearance in his tent only meant one thing, one glorious, life-changing thing. Rising to his feet, Elam felt as though he was floating out of his tent and across the village square. He could see his fellow villagers peeking out at him from behind their own tents, eyes alight with admiration. Only a few young warriors had ever been bestowed this honor, and Elam had been a unanimous favorite among them. No shame in savoring some of the adulation. The warm glow of the communal fire fell behind him as he strode deliberately into the blackened jungle. Making this trek in the dead of night was madness, especially with a man-eating Chue stalking about, but Elam knew it was the only way to get where he needed to go. Besides, passing through the beast's territory might have been one part of the initiation, a test to prove his courage. Through the trees in front of him, a new firelight appeared, this one raging in yellow in color. It had been made very recently. For him. Holding the Mbinga out like an offering, he pushed through the growth and emerged into the clearing. Just like he had heard about, 5 figures stood around a roaring campfire, garbed in feathers, paint, and lavish, colorful fabrics. They radiated power and benevolence, regarding Elam as if he were already one of their own. He stopped in front of the fire, gazing upon them through the flames. The center elder stepped forward. "Elam," he decreed. "Brave one. You have been called here on request of the elders. Your beacon is that of the Mbinga, on account of your ferocity in combat and the pursuit of game. Do you embrace the Mbinga as your own till your dying breath?" Elam raised the beacon above his head, his arms trembling with nerves. "Yes. I embrace it." The elder nodded. "Then let the skies consume your pledge." Elam knelt and placed the beacon in the center of the fire, barely registering the brief scalding on his hands. As he watched, the statue erupted into flames and developed a charred crust, sparkling with orange embers. Elam sucked in a breath. He knew at this point in the initiation there was no going back. However, that was also the extent of what he had been allowed to know. He stood and looked back up at the elders, awaiting further command. Movement behind him triggered his warrior's reflex, and he snapped around to see 5 other fully clad elders, their twisted faces devilish in the light. The 10 of them had encircled him. The mood suddenly took on a menacing air. "Elam. Filthy worm." Lower than dirt, one of them snarled, striking him with a wispy switch. Elam flinched at the lash, suppressing his urge to hit back. It's part of the rite, he realized, a red mark searing on his forearm. "Carrion eater," another cursed, whipping his back. "Pond scum," a third spat, smacking the back of his calf. His leg buckled, and Elam fell to his knees once more as the soft, sharp blows rained down upon him. Pestilence. Invalid. Stillborn trash. His skin stung with pain as he cowered lower, covering the back of his neck, his wounds burning from the nearby flames. "On your feet, maggot," an elder rasped. Elam stood up again, tall and proud despite his agony. "100 lashings upon you, and 100,000 more if you speak of this to anyone by our word," the elder said. "What happens here stays here, even if you emerge from your trials alive. Tell us you understand." "I understand," Elam declared, trying to stop his heart from jumping up his throat. "To become an elder, you must prove yourself amid endless suffering and torment," another said. "But physical and spiritual strength is not enough. You must also show initiative, leadership, and compassion." She grabbed a burning piece of wood from the fire and held it aloft like a torch, beckoning Elam to follow. "If you desire to become a leader of men," she explained, walking into the forest, "then you must do exactly that." Elam trailed her, his enthusiasm flipped over to pure, unbridled anxiety. The full weight of not knowing what the rite of initiation entailed was beginning to hit him. They emerged into a small clearing among the trees. There was a strong odor of plant oil in the air. The torchlight illuminated 5 cones woven from grass and twigs, large enough for a person to crouch underneath. Elam gaped at them. What could be their purpose? "An hour's walk from this spot, towards the sunrise, is a river," the elder said. "You and your men will navigate down that river until your final destination. It will be perilous. It is possible not all of you will make it. But only by working together and functioning as a tribe will you survive. If you and your men complete your journey, you will be judged on whether you deserve ascension to the elders or not," she finished. "Elder, what do you mean when you say, 'my men'?" Elam inquired. Without a word, the elder reached down and grabbed a vine from the forest floor, giving it a strong yank. The cones seemed to fly off with it, until Elam saw that they were merely coverings for triangular wooden structures underneath. He nearly gasped at what he saw. Inside each structure was a young man, stuffed within them like caged animals, leering up at him with hatred and fear. Even in the low light, Elam recognized the markings around their faces. They were Kushotos, members of a rival tribe whom their own had warred against for generations. "You wish to be a leader," the elder decreed. "Then lead these men. Lead them down the river. You must rule. You must compromise. You must use force if necessary. But in the end, you must protect them. Right now, you are their elder, and they are your subjects." The elder unsheathed an ivory knife and handed it over to Elam. "They are in your hands. Together, persist. Together, survive." Then she dropped the torch and melted into the night. Immediately the clearing burst into flames. Elam yelped and jumped away from the fire. The plant oil odor reeked more strongly than before. They planned this. Elam realized, dumbfounded, the hair on his shins singed off. The elder called out from afar, "Do not let the forest burn." What kind of leader lets his forest burn? Elam snapped out of it and fell to the ground, digging up soil and tossing it over the flames. A quarter of the fire was snuffed out after a few moments of uprooting, but it spread beyond his reach, snaking up the trunks of trees. "Damn it," he cursed, wringing his hands up the bark, desperately trying to smother the flames. The tribesmen exploded with insults and calls. "Get us out of here. Let us free, you jackass. No. Let us help." Elam nearly exploded with epiphany. He abandoned the tree and vaulted the flames, swiping his knife across the vines that bound the cages. One by one, the wooden structures collapsed, and the young tribesmen broke out of them. Ignoring him, they rushed over to the fires and stomped, dug up, or flattened themselves over the flames. Elam darted among them, quelling whatever flames had engulfed the tree trunks. Slowly, the firelight began to die, until there was nothing left except the smell of smoke and burnt hair. Elam couldn't see anyone, but the sounds of their breathing suggested there were no serious injuries. Well, one of them called out, "Any last words, you barbarous wretch?" "No, Kabaloo," another one yelled. "He is armed. He will gut you like a fish. 5 against 1. We can take him. Stop. If we go with him on his journey, then the rest of us will be freed. That's what the woman told us. Imani, you impotent mouth breather, a third voice spoke up. He is of the Cassini tribe. What do they know about grace or integrity? The moment we let our guard down, he will butcher us and devour our hearts. Kabunji, you are blinded by hate, a fourth, calmer voice said. Whatever these Cassinis have planned for us, the only way we will survive is if we stick together. I'm afraid we don't have a choice. Cassinis frick their mothers, he will frick us too. Kabalu protested. We can escape. We can run. Come on, let's run. There was the sound of fleeing footsteps, which slowly faltered upon realizing no others had joined him. Are you kidding me right now? Kabalu said, exasperated. Put it to a vote, the fourth Kushoto said. Majority rule. Either we go with him, or we attack and flee. All in favor of going with him? Imani, said Imani, thumping his bare chest. Lamba, the fourth voice concurred, thumping his own chest. There was a brief silence until Lamba spoke again. Attack and flee? Kabalu. Kabunji. Two chest thumps, tying the vote. Caught up in his stupor, Elam realized the fifth Kushoto hadn't said anything yet. Fibula, Lamba said. What is your vote? What followed was a throaty, guttural croak, like wood rocks grinding against each other. The fifth man descended into a gunky coughing fit. Speak, Kabalu demanded. Give us a sign. Anything at all. Fibula prostrated before them, rasping again, unable to articulate. It has gotten very bad, Imani commented. Soon it will reach his brain. What a beautiful picture, Kabunji commented. Elam, transfixed by the spectacle, suddenly realized a potential majority of them wanted to kill him. If this man cannot speak for himself, then I will break the tie, he declared. And I vote that you all come with me, and we will endure this hardship together. As a tribe. Such arrogance. Kabalu snapped. Befitting of a mother-freaking Cassini. This mother-freaking Cassini also has the knife, Elam growled, brandishing it. He was unsure if Kabalu could even see it, but his voice shook with anger. We will work together and get through this. But right now, if you act up, I will, as your friend put it, get you like a fish. Quiet followed, broken by Fibula's incoherent sputtering. His night vision adjusting, Elam could clearly read the uncertainty on the Kushoto's faces. Fine. But I don't approve, Kabalu groaned. Nor do I, Kabunji said darkly. Fibula gave another hacking wheeze. Elam winced, figuring that was his way of voicing disapproval. Thank God I stepped up, he thought. Sunrise is in an hour or two, said Imani. If we start now, we should reach the riverbank by first light. Stay close, Elam commanded as they grouped together and began walking. A Chue has been wandering these parts. It already killed one of our own. No less than they deserved, Kabalu muttered, pushing past him. Elam's knuckles whitened over the nice hilt, but he forced himself to simmer down. The rational man in him knew showing too much force early on might be counterintuitive. At least two were willing to give him a chance. That was an edge he did not want to lose. Fibula's breathing became harsh, but their walk through the forest went uninterrupted. There was no sign of the Chue, or any other animal for that matter. We could be a force to be reckoned with, Elam observed, feeling the first fragments of an inexplicable camaraderie form among them. I pray it comes to fruition. The first lazy rays of sun peeked over the tree line by the time the party arrived at the river. The water before them was turgid and brown, with a slight current. Elam grimaced. It was deeper than he had hoped, but at least it would only require minimal paddling. He paused. They had nothing to paddle, much less anything to paddle with. So, great leader, how are we to traverse this river? Kabalu said, crossing his arms. We could comb the bank, Elam responded, not making eye contact with him. Bad idea, Imani countered. The trees are too thick and the rocks are too steep. It's not worth the risk. We need a vessel, then, said Elam. Even something like a raft could hold the 6 of us. We just need manpower and time. Do you know how to build a raft? Kabunji inquired. Or how to guide it downriver? Are you aware of the perils involved? No. I thought not. Kusinis are jungle dwellers and dirt grubbers. We Kushotos know the river. We 5 can traverse these waters with our eyes closed. Let's put it up to another vote. All in favor of Kushotos overseeing the construction of the raft. The 5 tribesmen's hands wavered, about to thump their chests. Elam felt a sudden flash of authority. We are not putting this to a vote, he said. I will not allow anyone, least of all, the likes of you, to oversee the raft. I will designate our duties. He regarded the 5 tribesmen before him. Despite at least 2 of them signaling non-aggressive intent, he couldn't discount the possibility of them choosing to commandeer the raft and leave him behind. Once more, force had to be necessary, and cunning. Elam reached down and picked a twig off the ground. There is complete silence among us now. Only those who hold this stick will be granted permission to speak. He then brandished the knife. Anyone who violates the silence will be cut down, by my word. Their mutinous expressions said more than words ever could, but they remained tight-lipped. Elam then handed the stick to Thibela, who was swaying on the spot nearest to him. The other 4 tribesmen were aghast. You will be my emissary, said Elam. Help me lead these men in building our raft. Thibela gave another wordless rasp, his unfocused eyes blazing with indignation. But he turned to the others and made wild gestures, and they reluctantly set about gathering materials for their raft. As Elam had hoped, the work was completely silent, thus denying them the ability to conspire among themselves. While Imani and Kabalu dragged logs and timber from the jungle, Lamba and Kabunji took to gathering vines and lashing the wood together. The morning sun rose higher, bringing a stifling heat and a haze of mosquitoes, and soon the air was loaded with the smells of sweat and irritation. Thibela ambled among the workers, lending a hand whenever he could. He would sporadically give bizarre spasms and descend into more coughing fits. Now fully in the daylight, Elam could see his body was peppered with fresh, oozing sores. When Lamba drew close, Elam took the stick from Thibela and passed it onto him. Tell me what's wrong with him, Elam whispered. Lamba continued his knot work but whispered back. Thibela has been invaded by unclean creatures. Funza, we call them. It is too late for him. He is far gone. Thibela doubled over and hacked some congealed substance onto the muddy bank. He glared back up at them, giving a gurgling hiss. Elam willed himself to glare back. The other 3, however, were showing signs of weakness themselves. After an hour their work had become clumsy and slow. Leader, Lamba continued, we have not eaten in days. I know there are fruitful grounds downriver. We must embark now and find food, or else we will be too weak to continue. Elam scrutinized him, but looked around and saw that the others had stopped to stare pathetically at him. Even Thibela, despite his affliction, seemed as though in that moment hunger were the greater threat to his health. There was a snap and a sudden impact. Imani had pulled too hard on a vine, which had broken and sent his arm careening into a tree. When he retreated, his forearm was trickling with blood. Imani staggered away from it, dizzy and faint. Elam cringed at the display. Sit it out, Imani. No need to expend your energy further. Imani sank to the ground, cradling his arm and breathing sharply through his teeth. Elam observed the raft, which, despite its misshapen beams, appeared sturdy and navigable. This will do, he declared. He took the stick from Lamba and handed it back to Thibela. Do you agree? Thibela squeezed the stick as if attempting to snap it in his grasp, but he averted his gaze and nodded. The 6 of them lifted the raft and waded into the river, hoisting it onto the water's surface, where it miraculously stayed afloat. Everybody on, Elam commanded. The 6 men clambered onto the raft. It was scarcely wide enough to accommodate them all in sitting positions, and it wobbled dangerously, but after they had settled, it righted itself and the current dragged it away from the shoreline. They looked back at the muddy bank, which slowly disappeared as the raft drifted downriver, replaced by a tangle of trees and slippery rocks. There was no going back now. Only the waters would determine their fate. After 2 hours, the sun had reached a baking point and the current had slowed to something less than a crawl. Elam's back and legs ached from his awkward position. Imani and Kabunji, sitting by the front edge, had resorted to paddling with their hands, but it was inefficient and wasteful work, accomplishing little more than spinning the raft around. Water seeped up through the cracks in the raft.